And isn't it fascinating? Like we always want to be happy, and you said like we need to figure it out. So I want to ask here, like you can say stupid question, but like I believe
No
no
stupid
question is a
questions.
stupid question. How can I identify like what things make me happy, or how can someone identify what makes them happy?
This is the simplest, most difficult question.
Yeah.
Right? Because this is something like on a personal perspective I'm struggling with right now because I am working on a book, and
Mm,
what I'm having a hard time with is I can't write a book to tell people how to be happy because I would have to write a different book for every single person on this planet.
do-
And not only that, I would have to write a different book for different people at different periods in their life. So that is challenging because it's so unique. Like I said, at the same time, there are a lot of things that are available that are common or not necessarily universal, but a lot of people. So for example, for a lot of people, practicing gratitude makes them feel happier, but not for all. So some things work for some people and even not for other people or for different groups. Like I do a lot of research with university students, and what makes university students happy may be very different than if I was working with an elderly population in a retirement community, for
yeah.
example. Um, so that being said, what we do know from the science of happiness is that there are certain things that are more likely to make you happy. And part of the practice is trying on those different things and figuring it out for ourselves. Like I often find one of the most frequent questions I get asked, as soon as I tell somebody I'm a happiness researcher, they'll say, okay, Gillian, well, like, what's the one thing? What's the one thing that I need to do or buy or get
Yeah.
or say in order to be happy? And I always have to respond like there's no magic pill for happiness. But you are the pharmacist. Like it's up to each and every one of us to ask that question. And one thing I have noticed, there was a pattern that I started to notice in my research participants. So this is before COVID, back when we used to have in-person interaction in a research setting. If I was doing interviews, like one-on-one interviews where I was just chatting with somebody, or even a focus group where you have maybe 6 to 8 or 10 people or so, and we have a group discussion. When I would ask, are you as happy as you think you possibly could be? I have not had a research participant ever say, no, you know what? I'm as happy as I possibly could be. Every single person so far in my experience has said, yes, you know what? Even if I'm happy, I think I could be happier. Right.
Mm,
And so then my second question was, what makes you happy? And when I asked that question, one of two things was happening over and over and over again, enough for me to really start to think about what is going on here. There's a pattern. So, one, the person, before they even started their exhale, would have an answer. My mom, my dog, my cat, my whatever. Or so like it was like a reflexive response. Like they hadn't even, like it was before they started to even breathe, they had an answer. It was like a reflex. There wasn't a lot of thought that went into the answer. Or the opposite, sort of the other end of that spectrum, I guess, would be that they would have a really long pause and they'd really
mm,
have to think about it. And this happened so many times. I started wondering what is going on here. And then I realized that if we're not as happy as we think we possibly could be, but either A, what makes us happy is a reflex, like we haven't really put a lot of thought into it, or B, we really had to put a lot of thought into it, then no wonder. Because if we don't know what makes us happy, no wonder we're not as happy as we possibly could be, right? And so I love that you asked this question because that's where the area of opportunity for each and every one of us is, because we can ask that question to ourselves and we're the only one that can know that answer. We're the only one that can start to do that. And so you may be wondering, well, how do I even start? Right? It can feel very overwhelming. And so as somebody who's very data driven and likes to not only study people and experiments, but myself, one of the activities that I think can be really beneficial to help us answer that question is to do an activity they call happy hunting. So it's really simple. All you have to do is either get a notebook or an app on your phone, notes on your phone, whatever you want, however you like to write things down or keep track of something, and then make 2 columns, more
mm,
happy and less happy. And then as you go through your day, start every activity you do. When you're done that activity, check in. Do I feel more happy or less happy? And at the end of the day, or if you want to get a really rich data set, you could do it for a couple days. You start to see, okay, here I have a column of things that made me more happy, and here I have a column of things that made me less happy. And let's look at that. What in my less happy column can I remove or do less of? Because sometimes happiness isn't about adding more. Sometimes it's about doing less. And yes, there may be things on there that are part of adult life, like grocery shopping or cooking or laundry or cleaning, that we have to do. And that's just part of life. And there may be things on there that we can do less of, or maybe we can get somebody to help us, or we can delegate it to our kids or whatever it is. And then in the other column, the more happy, how can I do more of these things or spend more time doing those things? Because once we start to understand that, that's a good starting off point for us to then start pointing our compass in a more directed way towards happiness, as opposed to just kind of stumbling through in the dark and not really knowing.
Amazing. But Gillian, like if I ask question here, like you mentioned that less happy and more happy. If there are things like you can do and you make yourself more happy, you think like if you are gonna do that again and again, like in a repetitive order, more repetition can make things boring, and they might not be the things now like that makes you happy. You think that might also be the case in future?
So there is this concept. I love that you said that. You're really smart. In psychology, we call it hedonic adaptation. And essentially what hedonic adaptation teaches us is that we are adaptive creatures as humans. We get used to what we have. We essentially start to take things for granted. If you think about when you get a new car, when you get a new house, when you get a new outfit, when you get new shoes, when anything, the day that you get it, you're so excited. So say you get a new car, okay? And you drive around and life is just amazing and you're so happy. And then you look at your car 2 months later and you have wrappers on the floor and there's dust on the windshield or the desk, what's it called? Right, the thing at the top. I'm totally blanking on the word, but essentially we don't look at our car the same way 2 months later that we do the day that we got it. And or anything new for that matter, or exciting, because we adapt. Even lottery winners, like there's research that shows that people that win the lottery, they see a spike in their happiness when they win the lottery. But if you follow them over, even a 6-month period, their happiness starts to decline again, because we don't sustain our happiness at that level the day that we won the lottery. We adapt. So part of the practice, you're absolutely right, is always keeping things on our toes. As in terms of happiness, routine is, in a way, it can create some boundaries, but we do need to have some variation. So even if gratitude is something that makes you happy, then what that means is asking different questions. So one day thinking about people that you're grateful for, and then the next day things that you've learned that you're grateful for, and the next day body parts that you're grateful for, or whatever it is. But you're absolutely right. One of the keys to extending the potency and the amplification of the practice is having that variety in it, because that's really what keeps things fresh and exciting and new. And as humans, we like that because we want to adapt. We want to kind of keep that homeostasis. Sure. So the practice there, you're absolutely right, is trying to find ways to stay in the realm, but mix it up a little bit.
Sure. But again, new question came up in my mind. Like you gave the example of car. So let's say like I bought a new car, right? After 2 months, and you're absolutely right, like after 2 or 3 months, my happiness like level would be a neutral. But isn't it like I'm now increasing the level? Like, so if I really want to be happy again, maybe I have to bought another new car, like much more expensive than that, more costlier than that. So you think like, is it chasing happiness, and like you achieve one thing, now you are, after a few minutes, like you are done with it, now you want to have more and more and more after some time? Do you think like chasing happiness is healthy for your mind, for your health?
So this is a great example of this sort of materialistic or hedonic wheel that you can get on, right? More. And we see, even people ask me sometimes, does money buy happiness, right? If I make more money, does more money
Exactly.
bring more happiness? And while the data is mixed, one of the things that's consistent is that we need a basic amount of money in order to survive. So if we're concerned about how we're going to pay rent, how we're going to put food on the table, then absolutely money impacts our happiness, right? Because it's basic human needs. Once we get past that point, and then more money doesn't bring more happiness. And if you want to spend your money in a way to maximize your happiness, buying experiences or time are the two ways to do it. So experiences being quality time with people. Maybe it's going to an event together when it's safe to do so, or having dinner together, or taking a trip as a family, as opposed to buying a new outfit for your son or daughter for their birthday, for example. It would be better in terms of happiness to go for a family trip. And then also time. So if you are able to, for example, if you don't like cleaning your house and you're able to hire someone to do that, spending that money to give you back the time that you would have spent buying or cleaning your house can help to boost your happiness. At the same time, part of it too is that more money doesn't bring more happiness, because you're sort of in that cycle of, I have one mansion, now I need two mansions because the guy down the road has two.
Yeah.
So when we get into a position where we're feeling like we're trying to keep up with our neighbors or trying to buy more, the question becomes why? And what is it that I'm actually chasing? Because it's not having the cottage and the boat, and that's not it. It's what is asking those honest, real, raw question of, why do I want that?
Yeah.
Right? Is it that I want to fit in? Is it that I want to feel accepted? Is it that I want people to think I'm successful? Is it that whatever the reason may be? So when we can start to unpack that, often we don't really believe that that's what brings us happiness, but we can deceive ourselves. And the other piece of this is marketing and advertising does not do us any help in this, right? Because we watch any commercial or advertisement, often what do you see? You see that if I buy this, I'll be happy, or right?
Yeah.
Like you see these happy, lovely people doing on a vacation or on a whatever. So that's where I think part of the practice with happiness is starting to be intentional about it.
Mm-hmm.
And starting to be deliberate about A, what we're doing, and B, why it is that we're doing what we're doing. Because when we start to get real and honest with ourselves, that's where the richness of our self-exploration, our self-knowledge, our understanding of happiness, our experience of happiness is where we can incorporate that and start to really shape our life in a meaningful way that brings true happiness or deep satisfaction and meaning and purpose, as opposed to the fleeting dopamine hit of a new car or a new whatever.